what that drug, as well as Sabril, another extraordinarily expensive drug that costs $45,000 a month, which is mired in its own drug controversies.
I can't even start on the pharmaceutical train because I'll go on for a very long time. I'm from England, and that's NHS. We have the NHS. Did you ever face any backlash from trying such a controversial drug at the time?
Initially we told no one. We told our closest friends and some of our family, but we really told no one. We wouldn't tell our daycare or the many therapists we worked with for fear of any kind of backlash. When it became clear who we could trust, and when it became clear that it was a game changer for us, that we were able successfully to wean off all of his drugs, and now he's been seizure-free for well over 5 years with nothing else, with a known underlying cause in which 98% of kids have ongoing epilepsy.
Oh, wow.
I think part of that has been perhaps luck and maybe other things as well. But I do know that it has brought a sense of balance to our lives that we otherwise would never have had, and that we have gotten to watch him thrive on his own terms as a result of it. When it became clear that that was the case, and when people were really saying, like, he looks like he's doing really well, and we felt like we could slowly sort of unfold that story and tell others, that's where this emerged from.
So you're an associate professor of anthropology at Smith College in Massachusetts, where we are based as well. And right. I was so interested in your story when I first heard about it, because I'm an anthropology major as well. So this is my jam. I'm going to nerd out a little bit.
Of course you are.
Of course. I studied biological anthropology, and I graduated in 2017. So it was around the same sort of time that we didn't know too much about we knew about the endocannabinoid system at the time. I was learning some things that we now know are myths, right. CB1 and CB2 receptors. There was a lot of stuff that I can now tell you has been debunked. So I know how quickly this research moves. But it was back in like 2015, 2016, around the same time that you were learning about it, that I was studying out at UC Berkeley near the San Francisco Bay Area. And my mum was diagnosed with ovarian cancer back in London. And being stuck on the other side of the world from one of your parents when they're given that kind of diagnosis is incredibly difficult. And so I did the only thing that I knew how to do, which was to research the science of cancer and to try and understand what it was that was going on in her body. And at the same time, my then boyfriend, now husband, told me, you should also do, one of those optional classes so you can pick something you enjoy doing, like art or gardening. So I chose a gardening course. And of course, the gardening instructor at Berkeley grows weed. So of
course he does.
And I was having a talk with him one day, and he said something about cannabis is the most impactful plant in human history. And so I got really interested in how humans evolved alongside cannabis and how it had been used as a medicine before we really knew like what we call westernized medicine today and pharmaceutical medications. And I was so thrilled to hear that there were studies out there that said there are some sort of cannabinoids that actually help cancer patients. I cried that day. It was like a relief. I finally thought, great, I'm going to ask all the questions I can to the person teaching me about cancer and all the questions I can to the person teaching me about cannabis. And then I'm going to find other people that are interested in this and research it until my eyes closed. Like, it was all I could do from the other side of the world to learn what I could. And I told my mom about it, and I told her, if you have incredibly high-grade oil, which is called Rick Simpson oil over here, it's like tar, it's like goop. And I asked her if she would try and seek some out, and she said, no, it's illegal here. I'm going to stick to my radiation therapy. Luckily, my mom's cancer has, as of this year, she's in remission, and she's healthy and doing well. But I grew this huge interest in kind of the anthropological journey of cannabis alongside humans. And it honestly fueled me to start my career as a cannabis journalist and get into writing about it and podcasting about it. And stories like your family and my family, this is where the science starts, because we all sit around and talk about it. And this is sort of how humans have developed, in communities together, sharing knowledge. How has anthropology influenced your view of how we use cannabis now?
It's such a beautiful story, Britt, and I connect with you on so many levels. It's really astounding. But in part because I find what you're describing as this like journey of love, like a labor in a sense, that I find in my own work as well, that like there was little I could do for him but to research. Like I couldn't stand the fact that I couldn't undo his disease or what it was taking from him. But what I could do was use the abilities I had to research like hell and to find something perhaps that could give him the best shot in life we could. Can't take away the disease, but we can give him his best shot. And anthropology, I have to say, through this has been such a gift to me, both the research skills and the knowledge that like in 2700 BCE, there's evidence in China that cannabis was being used to treat epilepsy, right? So this goes back to even ancient Egypt, back to 11th century Islamic thought, and even in the Victorian era in the UK, right? So, I mean, there's astounding evidence that epilepsy can be treated through cannabis, so much of which has been lost during era of prohibition, right? Not only did it give me those research abilities and the sort of critical thinking abilities, but I think what it gave me most was this ability to see my story as part of a larger whole. I think otherwise, a diagnosis like we received can be so utterly devastating and isolating, as I'm sure you felt with your mother, right? That like I'm the only one in the world dealing with this, and that it's an awful plight handed to me. There are moments I curse it on his behalf, for sure. But the vast majority of the time, I feel a real connection with other humans going through something quite similar. It has given me a purpose, a sense of community, and a sense of building something larger, I think, which is where my investment in this story and in storytelling, as you say, really, that's where medicine comes from, right? It's like little instances of tinkering in kitchens or at the bedside that lead to people talking to others about it, that lead to larger connections forming, that have led to the explosion and growth of all sorts of legal ventures in the United States right now and around the world. I think we're at a moment in time when there's so much questioning of science and truth. And I think the story of cannabis fits into that larger moment in time when people are really grappling with what is science and who gets to decide what science is and how is it being written and who gets written out of it in what ways.
It's really interesting as we develop our notions of medicine and we learn sort of to rely on almost historic caregivers who have been health activists for their own families. For generations, our ancestors have gone back doing this kind of stuff, and to reconnect with it almost, it feels right to keep learning about what is out there in the world that could work better than what we've been doing up until now.
I think you're exactly right, Britt. I think that that's exactly what these families are looking for. I mean, 30% of folks with epilepsy are not able to find relief through pharmaceutical or diet interventions and go on to have refractory epilepsy. And I think that many of the families do not have an illusion that cannabis will just take away epilepsy, like that no problem will exist and that it will actually fix a problem. Instead, what it brings is a sense of harmony and balance that families are really looking for. Many families who have felt really failed by a pharmaceutical complex and a medical institution. But I think they are also looking for this sort of connection and this sort of almost return, right, to a notion that perhaps we can find balance and harmony as best we can in imperfect ways with the environment and with each other. And I see in these communities truly an extraordinary sense of building precisely that kind of community.
So your son now, you said he's doing well?
He is. He will be headed to kindergarten. And boy, is this one excited mother after this pandemic. He will be headed to kindergarten in about 2 weeks.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, he has we found out through whole exome sequencing, so a genetic sampling of the protein encoding parts of the human genome, that he has an incredibly rare disease. He is one of fewer than 100 known cases in the whole world. It impacts every single aspect of his being. Every cell of his body is impacted by the disease. And he certainly has his share of disabilities and challenges. But we were given little hope. At diagnosis, we were told he may never walk or talk, and that he may not be cognitively very aware. And in the years that followed that, before we found the actual disease culprit, there was little hope of what could happen. As soon as the genetic sampling came back, our neurologist told us he was about 3.5 at the time. This is the time when we throw out all those studies, because Lionel is going to be his case of one. And he truly has been. He is a case study of one. He walks and talks and quite more than that. And he is learning even to read now at the age of 5.5 as he enters kindergarten. So really not even that far behind some of his peers developmentally. And he is truly an extraordinary human. He is so alive. There is no other word for the way in which this child engages the world. He is so incredibly charismatic. And I am grateful for that gift, because I have so many friends whose children take so many pharmaceuticals and really are just in such a haze, that they are not able to see them in the way that I am able to know my own child.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I really hope that this story helps some other folks through something similar. Caroline, thank you so much for coming on to share your story with us. We're really honored to hear from you, and super honored to be involved in the Smith College syllabi.
Thank you so much, Britt, for having me. It is such a pleasure to be able to talk a little about my research.
A huge thanks to our guest this week, Professor Caroline Melly. Be sure to check out her story in the summer 2021 issue of Different Leaf, the magazine, which you can buy at differentleaf.com. Make sure you're following us on social media at Different Leaf and at different_leaf. And I'm at Brit the British. Thanks as always to our wonderful producer, Andrea Maraskin, and thanks to Homebody for the music.